American Dad and The Cleveland Show were both made by Seth Macfarlane after the huge success of a show that Family Guy was. But after 17 years and over 300 episodes later, American Dad is still airing new episodes, while The Cleveland Show was cancelled after just 4 seasons. So today, I'm going to tell you why American Dad succeeded, but The Cleveland Show didn't. But before I continue, tell me which show you enjoyed more in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. American Dad was first made in the early 2000s to fill the hole made by the cancellation of Family Guy. Fox Network gave Seth MacFarlane the platform to make a new show similar to Family Guy, in hopes of bringing back the demographic that cherished the show so much. This is what led to the birth of American Dad. But just as soon as it was made, Family Guy got revived, and so Seth MacFarlane had to leave it in the hands of his co-creators, Mike Barker and Matt Weitzman. And if these conditions weren't discouraging enough, the show was bombarded with ridicule and insults from critics and fans who accused American Dad of being a pale ripoff of Family Guy before it had even aired one episode. This was not the case, as the series was more akin to All in the Family, an American sitcom from the 70s that is widely considered to be one of the greatest pieces of television. And when you watch both shows, you can definitely see where the influence is coming from. But of course, people still wrote American Dad off as a poor imitation of Family Guy. And with Seth MacFarlane's limited involvement in producing the show, it looked like failure was imminent for them. On the other side of the spectrum, we have The Cleveland Show, which came into being in 2009 while Seth MacFarlane was still working on both Family Guy and American Dad. The Cleveland Show was originally meant to be called Black Family Guy, which I think is very funny, but the name was changed for obvious reasons. It served as the first and only spin-off of Family Guy to date, as it likely scrapped any ideas for future spin-offs after its dreadful performance. This spin-off came from expanding the idea of giving a starring role to a well-known character in the show, Cleveland Brown, one of the 3 people who made up Peter's best friends. Unfortunately, the directors made a huge mistake of picking out the most boring person in the posse to center a show around. I mean, we had Joe, a handicapped police officer in Quagmire, the most adulterous bachelor in Quahog, and they decided to go with the most uninteresting member of the group. Either Joe or Quagmire would have been infinitely better for a series, and perhaps we might have still had a show today if that was the case, but hey, everything happens for a reason. Back to American Dad, and its premise centered around Stan Smith, a CIA officer living in the fictional town of Langley Falls with his wife Francine, their 2 children Haley and Steve. Alongside the family was Roger, an alien Stan rescued from the CIA, and Klaus, a KGB athlete whose brain was put in the body of a goldfish. They all lived in the same house and made for some funny interactions together. To many people, American Dad seemed like Family Guy done right, and after getting rid of the Family Guy comparisons, the show was able to carve out its own path to success. The creators knew how to consistently make good episodes, and their writing portrayed comedy in a way Family Guy was never able to, such that it never depended on random gags or acts of stupidity to be entertaining. It had characters and plots that were able to keep people hooked on whatever event was happening in the episode. And it wasn't just mindless action or shocking acts on repeat to fill the runtime, but the characters actually telling a cohesive story with their action. No one person or trope was ever overused to the point where they felt saturated. Because of this, episodes were able to stay fresh for a long period of time. And the show also didn't rely too much on dark humor and cynical humor, so you could support its characters since they're not a bunch of a-holes like Family Guy. And in retrospect, the creators of American Dad went to great lengths to distinguish their characters from the main cast of Family Guy, and I must say, it had amazing results. Each member of the Smith family was fleshed out with personality and details that made them stand out in their own way. Stan was the Republican father with strong views on every topic. Francine was a loving and diligent housewife, Haley was the outspoken hippie, and Steve was a developing teenage boy. These differences in the personalities made for well-structured episodes that contained good interactions between all of them. But 2 characters who arguably took center stage early on in the show were Roger and Klaus, kind of like the Stewie and Brian duo. But Roger's personality alone provided a spice that you couldn't find anywhere else with his deranged pettiness and childlike behavior. His different personas always made things interesting, even when they switched to the more psychotic ones that went out of control. And it was always in a comical way, not just forced to move on events of the show. This was boosted by the funny interactions that he would have with the family and everybody in the town, such as being the most hated person in Langley Falls with his most notorious persona, Ricky Spaniel. In terms of development since the show started, American Dad has been very solid. Even though most cartoons start to dip when they have been aired for an extended period of time, the Smiths are still okay. They haven't gone through any crazy changes or become flanderized versions of themselves in any way. And even though they're having some slight dips here and there, they are still mainly the same characters they have been since the beginning. This, in combination with their non-political humor, is what has given the show its timeless appeal. It allows you to go and pick an episode from any season and still enjoy it, whether it came out yesterday or even 10 years ago. The same, however, cannot be said about the Cleveland show, whose main premise was about Cleveland going back to his hometown, Stool Bend, Virginia, with his son, where he reconnects with his high school crush and they get married. The Brown Tubbs family came into existence and consisted of Cleveland, his wife Donna, and kids Cleveland Jr., Roberta, and Rilo Tubbs. They lived a normal suburban life doing casual family stuff. So if that was the case, then what made this show so poorly rated that it had to be removed after just 4 seasons? And it's simple. The most pressing reason was that the Cleveland show simply failed to distinguish itself from Family Guy. At the time it was made, Seth Macfarlane already had 2 successful animated shows following the same dysfunctional family format. So this created unfair comparisons to the others and huge expectations for the show to succeed. Already when he made American Dad, there were these comparisons. And now with Cleveland show, they just went through the roof. But where American Dad was able to shake itself from the Family Guy tag by creating its own lane to navigate and explore, the Cleveland shows seemed to lean into these claims and became a fully fledged Family Guy clone, down to the characters and humor. Even the demographic of this show was supposed to be people who tolerated Family Guy, but were turned off by the cruel behavior among the Griffins. There were so many aspects of this show that were heavily influenced by Family Guy, such as Cleveland having his own group of 3 friends that would go to the bar to get drinks, or the random acts of stupidity that were meant to be entertaining. And it didn't help that the Cleveland show followed the same comedic style as Family Guy, relying heavily on cutaway gags and people berating American culture to try and make the audience laugh. It's safe to say that failed. So when you're watching something like that, all you think about is how Family Guy did it better. So this prevented the show from being able to go out and grow on its own to make something of itself that had never been seen before. So they stuck to the same format that had got Family Guy's success, hoping it would do the same for them. But they forgot that Family Guy was still on air. So why would people want to watch a watered down version of the original, whilst they could still go and catch the original? So by following this path, the Cleveland show stayed in Family Guy's shadow throughout the entirety of its run, resulting in people becoming disinterested in the show until its ratings began to drop, and it was ultimately cancelled after its 4th season. Cleveland returned to Quahog with his family, where he was roasted the heck out of by Peter, Joe, and Quagmire, and rightly so. And with his family, with the exception of Donna being relegated to background characters, it's safe to say that we have seen the last of the Cleveland show and whatever it upheld. So in conclusion, American Dad was able to become successful because it strayed away from the Family Guy format and built its own audience, with well-structured episodes, compelling characters, and comedic storytelling, while the Cleveland show slowly rotted away, trying to be a shadow of what Family Guy once was. And that's it for this video. If you made it this far, then I know you probably enjoyed it, so why don't you hit me with a like and subscribe to the channel for more amazing cartoon content. This video was very fun to make, so if you want to see me make something similar, why don't you tell me in the comments below. Click here to watch a video on the depressing reality of modern cartoons, and click over here to watch the video on why people love anti-heroes so much. Thanks for watching this video. I'll see you next time. Toon out.